10 worst Shark Tank pitches ever. 1. Vest packs. The guys who pitched vest packs, Arthur Grayer and Michael Woolley, strode in and casually asked for a $50,000 investment in exchange for 10% equity. Vest packs was based on an idea that Woolley's daughter had when she was 12 that helped her win an entrepreneurship competition. It seems that she even landed a chat with Oprah at the time. Woolley then teamed up with Grayer and ended up landing a deal that saw their backpacks offered at Walmart, which initially impressed the Shark Tank investors. That was before they learned that Woolley's daughter was not one of the children on stage modeling the backpacks and was, in fact, 27 at the time. That and the fact that sales were only around $10,000 per year, despite being featured at such a big name as Walmart, convinced the Sharks that this wasn't going to be a winner at all and pretty much laughed the pair off stage. The duo started out strong, but with such little support after such a long time of working at it, it's clear that vest packs won't be the new sensation sweeping the nation anytime soon. That being said, we're sure you can pick one up at Walmart, assuming they're still on board with vest packs at this point, which is something we can't really speak to. 2. No phone. No phone was a hard pitch to watch, and it was one that was always going to tank as far as we're concerned. It was pitched by Van Gold and Chris Sheldon, a couple of advertising talents who decided that a gag gift phone, along with an accompanying satirical website, was exactly what society needed. Their goal was to highlight antisocial behavior that stems from overuse of gadgets and devices. They claimed the no phone could help people kick their cell phone habit and even raised $18,000 on Kickstarter. That's somewhat impressive, given the fact that their no phone didn't actually do anything and was just a useless piece of plastic at the end of the day. The two asked for an additional $25,000 as an investment in exchange for 25% equity and were rejected across the board. They really should have known that their no phone would have been a no-go with the Shark Tank investors, but you have to give them credit for trying. While we see this as something fun that just happened to work out on Kickstarter, we doubt anyone else would be willing to take it seriously or invest any real money into it, especially when it comes to investing and taking on responsibility. 3. Ionic Ear. This is perhaps one of the most harebrained pitches that has ever appeared on Shark Tank and hails way back to the first season. It was then that Darren Johnson tossed out his Hail Mary pitch, asking for $1 million in exchange for only 15% of his company named Ionic Ear. The idea behind the company was that Johnson thought Bluetooth earpieces moved around too much and were uncomfortable to wear, which is true to a certain extent. What he proposed, then, was that we simply implant the required tech directly into a person's ear canal to alleviate this problem once and for all. He assured investors that the operation would be safe and that it wouldn't cause any unsightly scars or protrusions around the ear, making it the best way to solve earpiece issues once and for all. It goes without saying that he didn't stay on stage very long and left without a deal after a good amount of shame and ridicule had been tossed his way. With ideas like these so early on, it's a miracle Shark Tank was ever taken seriously. That being said, Johnson did offer some excellent comic relief. 4. Thrax. Do you just hate losing your socks, leaving you stuck with nothing but mismatched pairs? If so, Edwin Heaven, inventor of Thrax, has the solution, or so he seems to think. He showed up on Shark Tank and tried to get investors excited about his product, which just fell a little flat in their minds. He decided that he could solve the issue of missing socks by simply selling them in triplets, instead of pairs. That way, when one was mysteriously lost, the replacement could be brought out, leaving you without any issues or embarrassment. We're not quite sure why Heaven thought he'd gain the attention of investors, but he wasn't taken all that seriously on air after he ran through his highlights. O'Leary even called the guy a vampire cockroach, which are harsh words coming from him. Heaven boldly asked for $50,000 in exchange for 25% equity, which we suspect he expected would blow the socks off the Sharks. Instead, they circled and ate him alive, laughing him into the history books, with Thrax becoming one of the worst pitches ever seen on the show. Still, Heaven put on a good show and gave us a giggle or two while he tried to eke out even the tiniest amount of support. That support, needless to say, wasn't forthcoming. 5. Cougar Energy. The name of this product really says it all. No, it doesn't refer to a wildcat, but instead references a bit of derogatory term given to an older woman who prefers chasing younger guys. These days, it's fallen out of fashion and is looked down on by many. So we're not about to get into the politics, but we'll admit that it's probably not a good call to attach it to your energy drink company if your target market is anyone other than teenage boys. Then again, we're talking energy drinks here, so we assume that's the exact target market. Still, not cool, Ryan Cooster. Cooster showed up asking for an impressive $150,000 in exchange for 30% equity in Cougar Energy. The drinks came in shot-sized containers and were aimed not at teenage boys, but at older women who were interested in younger guys like himself. Cooster didn't end up getting a deal, which isn't surprising at all. His approach was all wrong, and he only had $60,000 in sales under his belt in 3 years, which wasn't all that impressive to the panel of investors. Maybe one day Cooster will put his talent into something a little less ridiculous. But it's really hard to redefine oneself after presenting Cougar Energy on Shark Tank and getting a resounding no from everyone. 6. Skinny Mirror. The Skinny Mirror is the brainchild of Miranda James. She sells custom mirrors to both businesses and individuals that are designed to make the viewer appear skinnier than they actually are. We can't even begin to describe how useless this is other than as a gimmick, and we're not sure we know of anyone who would even consider buying one of these things. That being said, she did manage to offload about $85,000 in sales. That's not minuscule, but it isn't anything wild for Shark Tank investors. James went on to state that she felt that her company was worth $1 million despite her weak sales, and asked for a whopping $200,000 in exchange for 20% of her business. James stated that her mirrors weren't anything special and were not a novel idea, backing her company up by saying that it helped to sell clothes. The Sharks then responded by accusing her of running a con of sorts and basically made it clear that they weren't interested. We think the idea is pretty ridiculous to say the least and aren't surprised that it was passed on so quickly. 7. Gato Cafe. Gato Cafe was always destined to make this list, and we think it's a little too niche for it to ever be a winner on Shark Tank. That didn't stop Adriana Montano for asking for $100,000 to help her start up a cafe that served its customers while allowing them to spend some time around a bunch of rescue cats for an admission fee. She also envisioned customers adopting a cat if they saw one that they liked. This could work somewhere, but has all sorts of issues attached to it right off the bat. Montano managed to convince a few investors that the idea could work if executed properly, but wasn't able to sucker them into investing in her concept at all. At the end of the day, she had to admit that she had no real value for the Sharks, with a few suggesting that they could just take the $100,000 and start up their own competing cat cafes. Montano agreed that she wasn't the best bet, but did show a lot of enthusiasm, which has to count for something. At the end of the day, she was just piggybacking on other established cat cafes around the world and just wanted a leg up, hoping she could talk a shark or two into helping her out. That didn't work out as well as she hoped. 8. RollaDoc. This pitch ended in Mark Cuban deciding that it was so bad that he actually went out of his way to walk up to the presenters, Richard and Albert Amini, and shake their hands, telling them outright that it was the worst pitch he had ever seen. That's gotta be hard to take, but at least it lands the two brothers on today's countdown with their terrible RollaDoc reveal. The guys used a ton of jargon to try to sell the investors on a social network that would link doctors with patients. The group decided unanimously that the idea was totally worthless, had no value, and would never work in the real world. They told the pair that their pitch was just a skeleton of an app paired with non-stop buzzwords. The two left disgraced and without a deal, but we bet the next time they try to play with the big shots, they'll show up with a little more than a hope and a dream. 9. Chimera. Chimera was presented by Jason Woods and pitched to the Shark Tank investors without any form of coherent business plan. He wanted to launch a company that built and sold electric bodyboards. When questioned further, Woods eventually admitted that he had sunk around $130 of his own money into the project and had nothing more than a prototype board to show for it. He had some basic engineering skills, but nothing in the way of business sense, and was asking for $250,000 to help him reach the next level. Upon hearing that, the investors told him that he was full of it and decided that he was just looking for a handout to help him overcome his lack of understanding of anything needed when running a business. They decided that he wasn't worth the risk and cut him loose. They did like the idea of the product, which did seem pretty cool, but with nothing to back it up other than a huge amount of money spent and no payoff in sight, it was bound to be rejected pretty swiftly. 10. Man Candle. The man candle didn't have much to it, and that's probably why it failed as a Shark Tank pitch. Johnson Bailey was all about keeping his place smelling a certain way, with man-friendly scents. He figured that women had scented candles, and men should have manly candles that smelled like beer, farts, football, and golf course. Now, we can't even begin to imagine what football and golf course smell like, but we're very happy avoiding beer and farts wafting around our home. Thank you very much. The idea sounds pretty half-assed, and that's because it was. He asked for a $50,000 investment in exchange for 25% equity, saying that he was ready to kick his company into high gear, but needed a little help from investors. The Sharks told him that his idea sounded gimmicky, which it is, and decided that it had no real traction. It would have been risky, and we can't imagine that a spot that just sells aromatic candles geared towards men will ever end up being the new big thing.